Hey church family, many of you I'm sure saw the news report this past Saturday night that Robert Trump, the younger brother of President Donald Trump, passed away at the age of 71. On Saturday, the president stated, "It's with a heavy heart I share that my wonderful brother Robert peacefully passed away tonight. He was not just my brother, he was my best friend. He will be greatly missed, but we will meet again. His memory will live on in my heart forever. Robert, I love you. Rest in peace." Along with so many others, we extend our condolences to the First family during what I'm sure for them is a very difficult time. This loss which they've suffered is a reminder that being elected President of the United States does not insulate a person from the effects of living in a fallen world. For example, of our 45 presidents, 25 have known the horrific pain of losing a child. So being the president doesn't give you a pass when it comes to grief. Beyond this, we also know that being young doesn't necessarily protect us from grief. According to a report last week from the Centers for Disease Control, 1 in 4 young adults between the ages of 18 and 24 have considered suicide in the past month because of the pandemic. More than 40% of those surveyed, and more than half of those identified as essential workers, said they experienced a mental or behavioral health condition connected to the COVID-19 crisis. Those statistics ought to serve as a call for all of us to pray for our young adults, to pray for our essential workers, to pray for everyone who's struggling right now. In addition to that, I want to ask you to think about your greatest challenge right now. Whatever it is, just take a moment and think about it, your greatest challenge. Whatever your greatest challenge is, let me ask you, did you choose it? Probably not. But can you choose how to respond to it? Absolutely. In Psalm 54, we read a prayer of David that he prayed when he'd been betrayed to the king who was seeking to kill him. In Psalm 54, he describes his situation. He says, "For strangers have risen against me. Ruthless men seek my life." Now, this was not a crisis that David chose, but it chose him. But David also knew that his circumstances could not change the character of his Lord. In that psalm, David says, "Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is the upholder of my life. He will return the evil to my enemies. In your faithfulness, put an end to them." As a result, David chooses to worship in the midst of his danger. In his prayer, he said, "With a freewill offering I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, O Lord, for it is good." If you're not familiar with it, a freewill offering is a kind of a peace offering that celebrates God's goodness. And in his prayer, we see that David is grateful for what God has done for him in the past. In his prayer, he says, "He's delivered me from every trouble, and my eye has looked in triumph on my enemies." As a result, when he recalls God's previous provision, he's able to trust him in the present crisis. 1 Samuel 23 tells us how God answered David's prayer. As King Saul and his soldiers were closing in on David, and his men were about to capture him, a messenger came to Saul saying, "Hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid against the land." So Saul stopped his pursuit of David and went off to fight against the Philistines. Therefore, that place was called the Rock of Escape. Friends, I don't know where your rock of escape is for the challenges you're facing right now. What I do know that is in the face of David's greatest challenge, he cried out to God, and God heard him and delivered him, and he promises us that what he did for David, he can do for you and me today, if only we'll turn to him. May we be people who take him at his word, and like David, run to him. Amen.